think that's shared with you, has it?
It has, yeah, we can see.
Shared it, Ruth.
You can see it?
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Need to go into presenter mode.
Yeah, okay, it's not showing on mine. There we go, that should be right now. Yes?
I think you're sharing the wrong screen. You actually got your presenter screen rather than the actual presentation on the big screen.
Shall we try again? I'm going to stop sharing and then choose a different one.
Okay.
This was all practice before, but there we are. That's
it's technology for us.
Technology, yeah. If I can't sort it, then somebody's going to have to sort it for me. Is that doing the same?
I'm seeing the presentation now, so that should be fine.
Yeah.
You see the presentation now?
Yes, I can see it.
Hooray. We're all good to go now.
Yeah, okay, so it's still the other way around, but I don't know if you want to carry on with this.
I don't know how to change it back to the other way because I don't particularly want everybody to see the notes.
Yeah, so okay, so if you want to stop sharing again.
I'm going to go completely out and close everything down, I think, and try it that way. It was working earlier.
Yeah.
That just shows you. These things are sent to try us.
They absolutely are.
Try. Have any of you techie guys got any idea about how it might be done?
Have you got your presentation on your laptop?
I had it set up so that it was going to be on my laptop for me to have the notes and the other one for it to be in the...
Is it easier if you email it to H, and H, can you put it up on the screen? If you've got
I can do that if that's okay with yourself, Ruth.
If you can do...
If you email your presentation to H, and he'll put it on the screen for you.
I'm not sure if that'll work because I use it by pressing the... I'd have to say about 1 million times, can you please move on now? I don't think it's going to do much.
Yeah, no, understood, Ruth. Okay.
Yeah.
So at the moment, are you seeing your presentation on the big screen? Or is it on your laptop?
Seeing it. If I go on to share it, but I've lost your share the screen.
Apologies to everybody. Unfortunately, we've got some technical issues at the moment.
Everybody can think of some questions that they would like to ask.
Yep. If there are any questions, then Ruth can multitask.
I can multitask, yeah.
Okay, that looks all right now, again.
But it doesn't until I do it, doesn't it?
If you just click the cursor down, and it should go on to the next one.
So, yeah, Ruth, if you leave it in that view, then you should be able to see your notes at the bottom.
Yeah,
and you can just talk through those screens.
Slideshow and go to my first slide from the beginning. Is that still
No, yeah.
It's still the other way around.
Because I think she's clicked that tab on, where you see the notes. So if you don't need to close screen, just click the X on the corner.
So if I stop my sharing just now, right?
Now we can't see how to guide you. That's the only thing.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Let's end this blog. You could stop the recording for the moment, maybe.
Yeah, let me hang on, bear with me.
No, we could sell this and get 500 quid for ATV on that. What was it? What was it used to be? Send your videos in.
Let's try screen one.
Yeah, instead of just starting the slideshow, just if.
Has that started the slideshow? Have you got?
Yeah, it started your notes as well.
Yeah. Oh, I have to go in and change.
No, if
you know where you got the magnifying glass, next to that you got the screen button. That's underneath there. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so next to the magnifying, you got the screen button.
Yeah.
Half screen.
Oh, the half screen button. Yes.
Yeah. If you click on that, what does that tell us? Okay, so that just blanks it out. Okay.
No, if you're on end slideshow.
That gives all the slides.
No, if you click on end slideshow.
Yeah, it will just stop.
Right.
Yeah, and then if you just click on the slides individually now, can you see your notes? Can you, wherever you need to go through?
Not if I click on the.
No, but can you see it right now?
No, they don't appear until I put it onto yours.
Yeah.
And then I can see the notes, and I can't see.
Can you see the 3 dots? Do you want to click on those 3 dots at the bottom next to the half a screen? See what that does. And then keep slides up there. What's that?
There's hide presenter.
Hide presenter view. There you go.
But then I don't know how I'm able to see my slide.
No, okay. So Ruth, yeah, go back into presentation mode. Back again.
Right. Let's go to just ordinary presentation mode.
Slideshow.
Yeah, I'm doing slideshow.
No, there's where it says click from beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, that's where I usually click from.
Yeah, yeah. Click on there.
You know, where it says custom slideshow, but it's got 2 different pictures. Do you think that can?
So yeah, just click on the downward arrow again for me.
That downward.
Yeah.
Custom shows.
No.
No, there's nothing there. Close it off, Ruth.
No.
I
might
custom shows, close that in the center of the screen.
Yeah.
Just do it manually.
What I might have to do is let's stop sharing and let me just do it.
Can we just try one more thing, Ruth?
Yeah.
Go into presentation mode again, and where you clicked on the 3 dots, click on the 3 dots for me.
On the presentation mode.
Yeah. So go back into sharing presentation. Go into presentation mode. Click on the 3 dots. There's an option that says screen.
I wonder what happens when I click off use presenter mode just for this to see what happens. You know, it's not even giving me the opportunity to.
If you share the screen again, H will be able to guide you.
We can try. Again, everybody, apologies for the delay.
Yeah, we will get there, and it will be worth waiting for.
Yeah.
It worked. I've done nothing different from last time.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure why it's not. I'm just looking on this screen. It is to do with the screen, and I don't really want to go in and mess around with that. So if I try to share my screen. Right. We'll take screen one. Into here. Let's talk about slideshow from beginning. We've got the number 1 and number 2 there now.
Right, number 1 and number 2.
That's to do with the screens, isn't it?
To do with the screens, yes. So number 1 would be your laptop, and number 2 would be the external monitor.
Yeah. Out of it again. That's a new thing, isn't it? That it's showing. Oh, I've just noticed it actually says screen 1 and screen 2. So if I open the presentation, then share screen. What's it done now?
Nothing.
You're not sharing anything, Ruth.
Was supposed to be.
Oh, okay, Ruth, I've got it.
You got it.
Yeah, on your presenter screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
At the top, you should say display settings. Can you
So
see
if I open up the.
Yeah, go into presenter mode.
Yeah. I'm in presenter mode.
Yeah, and at the top, you should see an option that says display settings. Right at the very top.
No.
Do you want to share your screen again, Ruth, so we could see what you're exactly seeing, and then H can guide you accordingly, hopefully.
Right, I've done it. Can you see anything?
No.
No, you're not sharing.
I don't think I'd shared my screen, to be honest.
No.
Share screen, so that's that one there. Share it.
Yeah, we can see something now. Okay, yeah.
Okay, so just go into presenter mode by clicking on from beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the very top, you see that display setting.
Yes.
Yeah, click on that.
Yeah.
And then swap presenter view.
Wait. Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. Okay.
Okay. But
If you hit record now again, H, so.
Yeah. Give me a minute.
oh, I see what it's done. So now you can see my.
Presentation.
You can see my presentation, okay, but it's
Without
just
the notes,
based
yeah.
on my other screen, which is
Okay.
Again, apologies everybody for the technical difficulties, but we've got there eventually.
eventually.
Hand it over to Ruth now.
Right, okay. Thank you for that, and namaste to everyone. This is just a talk about dementia that, I mean, I did one about 4 weeks ago, and this one's going to be slightly different. Perhaps go into a bit more detail about the way that some people might behave depending on what part of their brain had been affected. And I think that the last part that people might find really helpful is looking at some of the ways that people behave and what they mean by what they're doing or saying, and what you can do to, perhaps when people are being aggressive, to be able to reduce that aggressiveness. The last time I was explaining to you that there's two models of dementia. One's a medical model, so that's really what clinicians go with, and that's looking at the diseases that are affecting the brain, and it looks at the treatments that can be given. The other one is psychosocial model, and that's the model that I favour. That looks at the person's social background, about their personality, and how the dementia affects them as a person, and how, if you look at them as a person, then you can help them to live better with their dementia. But just a very quick introduction as to who we are at Amber Care Solutions. We're a social enterprise, and we're not for profit. We have initiatives that are living well, that look at all aspects of people's lives, because everything is so interlinked. If your finances aren't right and you can't put food on the table for your family, or if you're not working, if you're feeling depressed, if you're unmotivated to do any exercise, that all has a big impact on you, and you can't live well under those circumstances. But one of the things that we do and do quite a lot around is people with dementia. And I just thought it might be useful to run through just a few of the statistics that there are around dementia. And these are changing all the time, and it depends on who you look at as to what results that you get. But these are the ones that are really the important ones, and the ones that people more or less agree on. So at present, there are 900,000 people living with dementia in the UK. They reckon that there's probably about 25,000 people from minority ethnic groups in that. That number is expected to rise to 1.6 million by 2040. And if you think of it, that's not that long, really. And every 3 minutes, one person will develop dementia. So if you think, if we're going to be sitting here for an hour, how many of us are going to be affected by dementia? And another of the statistics around that is that 1 in 3 people who are born this year, they will have dementia. 1 in 6 people over 80 have dementia. And this was quite a surprising figure to me, although I probably shouldn't have been surprised about it, is that 70% of people who live in care homes have dementia. And dementia is one of the main causes of disability in later life, and that's ahead of cancer, stroke, and heart disease. And I think people don't often think about dementia as a disability, but a disability is just something that stops you from being able to live your day-to-day life easily, that you have problems with that, and also that those problems are going to stay with you. And we know that dementia is a progressive disease. So once you have it, then it's just going to get worse. Those figures are quite sort of startling and could frighten people, and then make you sort of think, well, do I need to think about my memory loss? Should I be worrying because I am uncharacteristically forgetting things? Can I just have a drink? So then, what do you do? Because everybody, as they're getting older, they forget things. You forget where you put your keys, where you've put your glasses down. You go into a room and you forget about that. But that's normal for people getting older. It's whenever things start to happen that you begin to think that, oh, well, maybe this is a bit more than just a problem with my memory. And it's around things like you turn the bath on and you leave it and you just totally forget that it's been on. You go back 20 minutes later and there's water everywhere. Or it might be that you go out of the house and you forget to lock the door, and you start to do that quite regularly. Or when you're cooking something and you've emptied everything out of the saucepan and you think you're finished with it, and you put it back down onto the cooker ring and you forget to turn it off. And then there's the bit where you're walking somewhere that you're really used to, and you suddenly think, I'm not too sure where I am now. So you begin to get a bit lost in familiar places. And the other one is when you forget about where you've parked your car. And that can be even which car park did I park it in, never mind about on which level was the car parked. So all of those things start to impinge on your daily life. And you come to this point when you think, well, maybe I should go and find out and see if there is anything. I mean, as I said last time, it's not necessarily dementia. It could be because your vitamins are lacking. You might have thyroid problems. There might be a bit of depression there or infection. But you can't tell that for yourself. You need to go and ask an expert for what they think it might be. And they then are going to put you through a whole load of tests, cognition tests for your memory. They'll do lots of blood tests to make sure it isn't anything else like vitamin deficiencies. And they'll send you perhaps to a psychologist to have some cognitive tests done. So they just really test to see what your memory is like. And then at the end of all of that, which might take a bit of time, especially with COVID having slowed everything down, you may be told, well, you have dementia. The thing about dementia is that it's not the name of a specific disease, but it's a broad term that describes a range of signs and symptoms. So it's not a disease in itself, but it's a broad term which we use to describe the signs and symptoms. And the common signs and symptoms are to do with memory, thinking, solving problems, using language, so whether that's speaking or understanding it, and being able to interpret information. So maybe it's like a good example is you're looking at a dog, but for life of you, you can't think. You know it's a dog, but you can't actually get your brain to think that that's a dog that you're looking at. And all of this depends on what part of the brain that's affected. And everyone that has dementia is different. And the reason that they're different is because it depends on what part of the brain has been damaged, either by disease or from damage. I mean, we've all heard about the footballers who've been told not to head the ball so much because they think that might have led to dementia. So it's all about the brain and all about the different parts of the brain that are going to end up with how your dementia presents. And the first one is the frontal lobe, and that controls things like movement, your emotional behavior, your personality, how you interpret things, and how you feel. Then the temporal lobe, that's to do with your long-term memory and your speech and hearing. And the parietal lobe, that's to do with language, spatial awareness, so knowing where you are in a space, in a room, that you're quite conscious of your exact position, where you're placed. and recognition. So that might be about recognizing things. One of the common things with that is if somebody looks in the mirror, if they have dementia, and they just don't recognize themselves, they're looking there and they're thinking that that's a stranger, and that's because the parietal lobe has been affected. The cerebellum, that's to do with balance and your posture and your muscle coordination and your movements. And then the occipital lobe, and that controls your vision. There's 4 main types of Alzheimer's disease, although there's hundreds, but I'm just going to talk about the 4 most common ones. So Alzheimer's disease, you can see here the difference between a healthy brain and a brain that's been damaged by Alzheimer's disease. And in Alzheimer's disease, you get things called amyloid plaques that affect the brain, and you get tangles as well. And all of this means that there's a decrease in the size of the brain, and the brain cells dies off. And it's worth noting that as you get older, your brain cells do die. But with dementia, they die at a much faster rate than would normally happen. One of the main things with Alzheimer's disease is memory, and that's short-term memory loss. Being able to think and to work things out. Language, so being able to understand what people are saying, or else finding the right words to call things. So they might look at a chair and not be able to think that that's a chair, so might use something like something to sit on. So using the wrong words. And then things like solving problems. So you're not so able to make rational judgments, or just simple things if you're trying to work out your budget at home with all your finances, that becomes more difficult. Or something as simple as going shopping in the days when we do use cash, to be able to work out how much money you needed to give somebody, and equally to check back to make sure that what they were giving you was right. The next one is vascular dementia, and that's linked mainly to people who've had a stroke. So that's to do with the blood not being able to get through properly to the brain cells. Can happen because of a clot or because of bleeding, but that part of the body is affected and the brain cells there die. So very similar symptoms to Alzheimer's disease. So short-term memory goes, not being able to speak to think quite so quickly as they were able to do. It takes them longer to do that. Communication will go, and that's often because the part of the brain that affects speech can be damaged and the person isn't able to talk. You could have paralysis or weakness. So if you think about this being linked back to having had a stroke, that's where that comes from. They have hallucinations, and these can either be visual, so they can see things that aren't there, but they equally can be visual. So they might be able to hear things as well as the visual things. And then to have delusions, so believing that things are true, even if they aren't. And I'm not sure if you could see that picture of the little cat looking in the mirror and thinking I'm a lion, and the one next to it looking and thinking I'm very insignificant. So it's that sort of thing, that believing that what you see is actually true when it isn't. And then there can be problems with incontinence, and that's really linked to the fact that they've had this stroke. So that's just another part of their body that's been affected by it. Then you get dementia with Lewy bodies, and this has some characteristics that are very similar to Alzheimer's disease, but also to Parkinson's disease. And these Lewy bodies, you can see them in this picture here. They are tiny spherical protein deposits that you find in the nerve cells, and this affects the way that the brain is able to work. And the way it does it is because in your brain, you get these chemical reactions that messages jump across from one part of the nerve system to the other. But these Lewy bodies prevent that from happening. The signs and symptoms, they're very similar to those of Alzheimer's, and they lead to problems with memory loss and not being able to think quite so clearly, and reasoning and language. But it does differ to Alzheimer's, because if you remember back to that picture about the brain, part of the brain at the base was called the cerebellum, and that's the area of the brain that helps with balance and coordination. And then that means that they have problems with that. They also have problems with solving any problems, like I said before, with Alzheimer's disease. The individual might still have some hallucinations, so these ones that are seen or auditory. They might have nightmares at night, so that can be quite difficult for care partners. And then problems with sleep. They have many sleepless nights. But one of the things with this is that they quite often will sleep for long periods in the daytime, which then obviously, as you know, that's going to affect your speech. The other thing with dementia with Lewy bodies is that their symptoms also are very similar, and they look very similar to somebody who has Parkinson's disease. So I'm sure very many of you are familiar with that, where somebody walks with a very slow shuffling gait, perhaps bent over slightly, their balance isn't too good, and they have this fixed sort of expression on their face, and they have difficulty moving and with doing things. Then we have frontotemporal lobe dementia. So if you remember, those are really at the front of the brain. And one of the diseases that are common in frontotemporal lobe dementia are Pick's disease. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. But this is caused by damage to the frontal lobe and the temporal lobes of the brain. These are the areas that are responsible for our behavior, our emotional responses and language skills. And it helps explain some of the signs and symptoms of frontotemporal lobe dementia. And in some ways, this is quite a difficult one to deal with, because this is the area of the brain that actually controls your inhibitions. So you could have somebody who was a very private sort of a person and didn't like to put themselves forward very much, and through no fault of their own, but just because of damage to this area of the brain, they may do things that are totally out of character. For example, undressing in company. And I don't know if you've been in hospital where people with dementia have been in the same ward, where they throw the bedclothes off, they get out of bed, they take the clothes off. That's all nothing that they can't help that. That's to do with the damage that's happened to that part of the brain. And I think that's quite difficult for people to be able to come to terms with. But there's definitely personality and behavior changes. So perhaps somebody who would have never in their lives sworn would swear and be very obstructive, be very aggressive. They could develop compulsive rituals. It might be something as simple as every few minutes washing their hands. It could be that they were turning the lights on and off very frequently. It's just the way that affects them, what ritual they're going to pick. And then this bit, I think, is really difficult, where because of the inhibitions have gone, and because it's that part of the brain that controls your behavior and your personality, it's all about their self-interest. They become selfish, uncaring, they can be quite rude, and they just lack empathy with anybody. And you can imagine, if you're dealing with this from day to day with your care partner, that it becomes really difficult to cope with. And we need to learn coping mechanisms to do that. So you've got this diagnosis, you know all the things that that could be there, and then you're starting to think about, I don't really want anybody else to know in the community. I don't want my friends to know. I don't want the family to know, because they're going to think that I'm just mad. That's what dementia is, because as we know, there isn't a word for dementia in any of the Asian languages. So this person thinks they're mad, and they think that everybody else is going to equally think that they're mad. And then they begin to think, perhaps this is a punishment from God. Maybe this is something that I did in a past life, and this has come to judge me. Or else they might think that they're possessed by evil spirits. So again, all entwined with some spiritual beliefs that people might have, and think that it's because of what they've done that this is what they are having to suffer. The big thing then, I think, is stigma. That's how you feel. And you can see the point of the finger pointing there at that one person. And I think a really good way of understanding stigma, which I have to be honest is quite difficult to understand, is to say that if you stigmatize a person, you're treating them as if they were a diseased object, or an alien, or an outcast. So somebody that you don't want to have anything to do with. And then comes a feeling of shame for what you've done in the past, that's brought this to you. And then shame for thinking about how it's going to impact on the family, and how people perhaps outside are going to talk about you. And then thinking about, well, if they know that we've got dementia in the family, that there's people who behave perhaps just a bit oddly, doesn't seem right, that then for the younger generation, it's more difficult for them to find a husband or a wife, because people don't want to marry into a family that has that sort of a background. And then there's the feelings of being rejected, because quite often what happens when somebody has a diagnosis of dementia, there's a temptation to keep them at home, keep them away from everybody else. When visitors come, make sure they're in the other room or in their bedroom. When there's weddings, don't even think about inviting them to a wedding, or when there's birthday parties, or when there's some celebrations going on in the temple, or whatever, that they feel as if they're not able to go there, that they're not welcome to go there. So those feelings of rejection. And then there's the fear. What's ahead of me? What's going to happen? Because we know that dementia is progressive, that it's not going to get better. No matter what you do, it's not going to get better. It's going to progress, and it's just going to get worse. We'll see shortly what you can do to try and help to prevent that, the progression, slow it down a bit, but you can never slow it down completely. So then it's a bit of, now what? All you can see is the memory loss ahead, because I think that's what people fixate on when they think about dementia. A lot of people, when you say to them, what's dementia? They'll immediately say, oh, that's memory loss, and won't recognize the other parts of it, about interfering with people's daily life and them not being able to do the things they might be able to do. But that thought of my memory is going to get lost. I'm going to forget things more and more. How am I going to cope with that? And then with that comes just a feeling of hopelessness, that this is the end. What is there now for me? What is there for the family? And then thinking about all the changes. And I think immediately what pops into people's heads is, right, that's it. I'm not going to be able to drive anymore. I'm going to give up work immediately. And that's really difficult for people with early onset dementia, when they can develop it at sort of 50, 60 years old, still working, still having a very busy working life, to think that, right, that means now I can't work anymore. And all the thoughts come in about not the good changes that might happen, but all the bad things that might happen that they're going to have to cope with. So it's all uncertainty, just don't know what lies ahead. Everybody thinks that having dementia, having a diagnosis of dementia, is the end of everything. It's the end of life as you know it, that there's no hope, as I've said. But dementia doesn't define a person. This is about embracing a new normal. It's about finding ways to cope with the things that dementia suddenly throws at you. And believe me, it does throw things at you every day. And you have to learn to live with those and work your ways around them. So it is about embracing a new normal, just not for the person who has the dementia, but the other people affected. So their care partners, their friends, and their families. And it is possible to live well with dementia. I think this is a really good diagram. You might not be able to see the detail of it, but it shows all intertwining of your physical abilities, your thoughts, and just everything that goes around in your brain. And I think that that's what happens with dementia. You still can think, but not quite in the same way. You can still live with dementia as long as you're prepared to try and find ways to actually to do that. And it's really, I can't stress how much it's important to remember that there's more to the person than the dementia. And we have to take each person with dementia as an individual who has their own unique needs and the behaviours, the way that they behave, and work with them from a very person-centred point of view. I hope you're still with me. That's all quite heavy going, really. But what I now want to do is to show you some of the things that happen, perhaps because somebody's got dementia, but also what can you do about it? And I think that's the important bit. They've got dementia, nothing you can do about it. All you can do is to make sure that the life they live is optimized to the best. And that's all around knowing that person, knowing their life history, knowing what they like to do, what they did when they were younger. All of that has to be found out so that you can give the very best care to a person who's living with dementia. So just a few things here. These aren't all of them. And if by the end of this you suddenly think, oh, there's something that happens and I'd love to know how I could deal with that, I'm happy to take those questions at the end. So we've gone the wrong way. So this is a very common one. Asking for a loved one who is dead. They've forgotten that that loved one has passed away. There's absolutely no point, and you never should try to say to them, don't you remember that they died 2 years ago? Don't you remember it sort of last month, last week, 10 years ago that they died? By doing that, you bring back those memories and you bring back that grief all over again. And usually when they're asking for a loved one who's dead, it's because they're looking for some comfort or perhaps for some intimacy. And one of the ways of dealing with that is to look around for hints. I visited somebody last week, and I know that his wife had died a couple of years ago, and he talks about that and the fact that she died. But instead of pursuing that with him, I look around and I could see his wedding photo and just started talking to him about that and how pretty his wife was and did she work and all these sort of things. So it's almost distracting and taking it away from them. Worst thing you can do is to say, oh, they're just going out to the shops and they'll be back shortly. You shouldn't tell lies. There has to be another way of finding an answer without telling lies and without causing distress to somebody. Somebody walking up and down, that if you've gone into a care home, that's quite common to see somebody walking up and down. That could be because they're bored, tired of sitting in that chair sort of for the whole morning and not being able to do anything. They could equally be somebody who's very active and has been exercising 2-3 times a day, and they want to carry on with this walking up and down. And it may even just be simply something like they need to go to the toilet and they're not quite sure where it is. So it's always worth checking that one out. Repeating the same things over and over again. And here's one where the last thing you should do is to say, don't you remember you told me that 5 minutes ago, and you told me at 10 minutes before that as well. That is just going to upset the person because they cannot remember that they said that to you. So they tell you something and then it's gone. It just floats out to the other side of their mind. So it's just carrying on with that conversation. I've had somebody telling me that they loved playing crown bowls. If he told me it once during the visit, he told me it 10 times, and each time I had to say, oh, did you? Where did you play? Who did you play with? And whatever. So it's just keeping that calmness and not getting frustrated because it's nothing that person is doing. They can't help it. It's because part of their brain is damaged. If somebody broke their arm and they couldn't use it, you're not going to blame them, are you? You're going to help them to do the dishes, help them to do the vacuuming, whatever. It's exactly the same. That part of the brain is damaged, the cells have died, it can't be used, there's nothing they can do about it, so you have to help them to overcome that problem they have. Insisting they need to wait for their mother to take them to school. No point saying, your mother's not here now, don't you remember you've grown up, don't you remember you've got children of your own, you've got grandchildren. This is one about really where somebody is saying that they need that comfort from their mother. Perhaps it's thinking about a meal that she's maybe prepared for them quite often, and that's what they're looking for. So that's taking them aside, giving them activity to do, talk to them about their feelings and why, how are you feeling? Are you feeling sad? And giving them that opportunity to talk to you about that. Hiding things. Quite often they will take things, and it's not particularly where they've forgotten to put it, but it's that they've deliberately hidden things because they want to keep a hold of as many of their possessions as they possibly can. Could be because they think that people are coming in to steal their belongings, but it's also that knowledge that they have got those things that belong to them. And it might be that you get them a basket, a box that they can keep those precious things in. And then that's really good for doing memory work and going back and looking at the things in the basket and asking them what it reminds them of. Because even though short-term memory goes, quite often long-term memory goes in most kinds of dementia. And then this, I mentioned before, the swearing and using abusive and offensive language. And one of the important things to do is to remember this is coming because that part of this person's brain has been damaged, the brain cells have died, so they've got no control over that. But also remembering that it's not a personal attack on you, that it's not you that they're actually getting at, it's something that they can't help doing. One of the big things, I think, is aggression. How do you deal with somebody that's swearing at you and is hitting out at you? There are ways of dealing with aggression. And again, it's important here to remember that this aggression is a way of trying to express what they can't tell you verbally, what they can't voice to you. So there's always something behind that aggression, and it's up to you to be able to find out what that is. So it might be because they're not able to do the things that they used to do, so that they know that perhaps they can't cook a familiar dish anymore. And that just makes them feel so humiliated that other people are having to do things for them. So that can be anything that they're no longer able to do. If they can't communicate their needs verbally and people don't understand and they keep trying to make themselves understood, they can become very frustrated, and that leads to aggression. Again, this bit about wondering what's going to happen to them in the future. What does the future hold? Are they going to be able to cope? How are their loved ones going to be able to cope? How is it going to be for them? And they're very frightened then, and that leads to aggression. This one, you should never approach someone who's living with dementia from behind. So you should never walk up behind them and speak to them, and definitely not put your hand on their shoulder, because they become startled and they might think that they're being attacked, and then they're going to lash out at you. And not being given a choice. Even somebody with moderate to severe dementia is able to make decisions for themselves. They can't make the big decisions. They can't make decisions about their finances, for instance, or what house to buy, or anything that's a big decision that has to be made. But they can be given a choice, and a simple choice of what jumper do you want to wear today? So in front of them, a brown one and a blue one, and they're asked, which one would you like to wear? And they can choose it. And that's still giving them some control, because otherwise they feel totally disempowered. So if everything is done for them, then they feel disempowered and become aggressive. So sort of along with that, giving them too much information or asking too many questions. So you can't, if I use my example from before, you can't say, okay, it's time to get dressed now. What skirt are you going to wear? Are you going to wear a blouse? Are you going to wear a jumper? Are you putting your shoes on or your slippers? Is it cold enough for a cardigan? They'll have lost you at the very first question. Come on and let's get dressed. After that, nothing else is going to matter, will have gone in at all. So then that again is back to this, just give them very short choices. And one thing that's quite a good idea with helping people to get dressed is to put the clothes out in the order that they need to be put on, and start them off at one end and then help them as they walk along, so they're still in some control. And you can ask too many questions. So if you're sitting just having a chat with somebody, it's best to ask one question at a time, because again, if you ask 2, 3 questions, 4 questions, they maybe remember one of those, and they're going to get frustrated if they can't remember all of them. So they just feel a bit overwhelmed, and that makes them aggressive. And this one to me is perhaps one of the worst ones, the ones that I hate to hear. The person who's an adult We can never forget that even though they have dementia, they are an adult and shouldn't be treated like a child, and they shouldn't be scolded and told off, because then they just feel as if they're being disrespected. But at the bottom of all of this, you can see how important it is to find out about the person so that you know how you can distract them, how you can give them another thing to do and to think about, so as to take down that aggression. And then an aggressive outburst seems to come out of the blue. You can't tell where it's come from at all. Quite often this will be because of pain, and then that's up to you really to try and find out if that is the cause and what you're going to be able to do with it. So there's a lot of things to deal with there, and these are only just a few of them. There's lots of others, and I'm sure you could give me other examples and say, what do I do about that? But as I say, at the basis of it, get to know that person, know what their likes and dislikes are, what they liked in the past, what sort of things they like now. And the big thing is keep calm. And I know that that's easy to say. And when somebody's been really aggressive and you don't quite know what to do, that the last thing that you're thinking of doing is keeping calm. But keeping calm is definitely the answer. And remember, whatever they're doing, whatever they're saying to you, however nasty they're being, whether they're lashing out at you, don't take it personally. You have to remember that this is to do with all the changes that are going on in their brain, and they can't be responsible for things. It's beyond their control, so it's not deliberate. Avoid confrontation and don't contradict them. Don't get into an argument. That's the last thing that you should do, or you shouldn't challenge them, and definitely don't contradict them. So if they say one thing, so if they say that black is white, then don't tell them that black is black, even though that is the truth. And don't raise your voice or become angry. So speak in really quiet tones and respond in a calm, reassuring manner. And that helps to bring down the aggressiveness. Don't attempt to restrain them, give them space, because I think it is quite tempting to be able to reach out and perhaps grab somebody's arm and think you're going to grab them and take them down to their room or down into the lounge or whatever. You should give them the space and minimize any physical contact, because that's just going to make them lash out even more. And distract with something they enjoy. So here you have to really know what it is that they would like to do. It might be to go out for a walk into the garden if it's a nice day and to look at the flowers and the plants. It might be that they like to watch soccer, football on the television. There might be some sports that they could sit and watch, or they might want to look at the newspaper and have you go through it with them. And the important thing is to identify the triggers. So you'll find that people who become aggressive and all the things that I went through with the aggressiveness, they'll keep on doing that until you find the reason for what starts that off in the first place. So there's a lot going on at the moment, and there was a study in the Lancet in 2020 that suggested that up to 40% of dementia cases could be prevented, or there could be delay in the progression of dementia if you address the risk factors. And we're now being asked to think brain health. I don't know how many of you have heard on the radio. Maybe you're not like me. I watch Smooth Radio West Midlands, and I think about every hour I hear an advert around think brain health. So that's what we've been asked to do. And there's three things. So the first thing is looking after your heart. The second thing is keep your brain active. And the third one is about keeping connected. So we'll take these one at a time. So what they say is that what's good for your heart is good for your brain. So that really is around all the things that we know about keeping fit and well and active and happy, basically. So the first thing is eating well. And I'm just going to go through this really quickly. So this is about taking your 5 portions of fruit and veg a day. It's good if you're a vegetarian. I think it's much easier to do that one than perhaps those who are fish or meat eaters. Meals should be based on potatoes, bread, rice, pasta, or other starchy carbohydrates. So your meal with your rice and your chapatis, that's a good start. Have some dairy or a dairy alternative if you're intolerant, like soya drink. Or if you don't really like milk, then you can replace that with yogurts and cheeses. So eat some beans, pulses. If you're not a vegetarian, then fish, egg, and meat, and other proteins. And you should choose unsaturated oils and spreads and eat in small amounts. And at this point, I always talk about ghee. A lot of people aren't using ghee anymore, I know that. And I also know that if you do still like to use ghee, it's very difficult to stop using it. And the best way to do that is to gradually decrease the amount. So perhaps have 3/4 of the amount of ghee with a bit of unsaturated oils and gradually get it down until you're at the point where you're at the ghee has gone and you're using the saturated fats. That's what we should all be aiming for. Then foods that are high in fat, salt and pepper, salt and sugar even. You should eat these less often and in small amounts. And remember, and I think this is one that people forget probably, is to drink plenty of water. You should be active, and that could be dancing. So it could be more formal dancing like these ladies, but it could just be jigging about a bit to the music that that is playing, or even tapping your knees along to a tune, clapping your hands. It doesn't have to be anything that's very exotic. And yoga is really good for being active, but also good for the mind as well. Going out for a walk in the country or in a green area, preferably with other people. And if you've got a dog, taking the dog for a walk. If you're using the buses still, then you should get off your bus stop earlier and carry on with your journey walking. You should use the stairs instead of lift or escalator. And people often think it's got to be a form of exercise and then forget that things like housework are a very good form of exercise, probably one of the best. And similarly, do it yourself is as well. Then it's about lifestyle choices. So it's about quitting smoking or hopefully never starting. Drinking alcohol in moderation, so definitely no more than the 14 units that are recommended by the NHS each week, and that's for both men and for women. And it's quite a good idea to maybe have some drink-free days if you can't stop, and definitely not binging. So thinking, okay, Saturday night I'm going out, I'll have all of my 14 units on that night. That's not good for you at all. And saying no to drugs as well. And then health checks. So I wonder how many of you know what your numbers are. So your blood pressure needs to be checked regularly, your cholesterol levels. That picture is showing a fatty build-up within the vessel. Diabetic checks, so if you are a diabetes, to do routine blood glucose levels. And if you're not a diabetic, to get checked out with a GP to see whether you're developing pre-diabetes. And then you should go for health screening when you're called. So that could be prostate cancer screening, bowel cancer, breast cancer, whatever you're called for, you should always go and have the screening done. And then one that perhaps people don't think about too often is getting a check either by the pharmacist or by your doctor to see whether your tablets are right for you, because quite often a mixture of tablets can cause problems with confusion and behaviour. And the problem there is that quite often you might have heart disease, you might have diabetes, you might have, let's say, asthma. And all these doctors prescribe you tablets. And how often do they actually ask you, what are you on already? And how do these interact? So it's always worth having that annual check of your medication. And then the second thing is about keeping your brain active. So use it or lose it. And this can be very simple things like playing cards. That's good for socializing as well. And this game, and my husband told me how to say it, and is it Karam? Karam, can hear me? Help me out.
It's Karam.
Karam, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I knew I was going to forget that. So that it could be doing jigsaw puzzles. Then I was going to say, and then for the ladies, knitting, but I know lots of men who knit and who knit very well. But knitting is good. And I think particularly if you do something that has a pattern to it. So some of you might be familiar with like Aran patterns, where you use 3 needles and you have to cross them backwards and forwards, and you're having to follow a pattern. So that's quite good. And to carry on with things like sewing, and then learning how to cook a new dish, and perhaps doing that with a friend as well. And maintaining language skills, because we all know that as you get older, then you can tend to lose your language skills. So maybe throughout your working life, you have been fairly good with English as your second language, but it's one of the things that can get lost. And a good way, I think, probably of maintaining your language skills, particularly with some English, is to talk to your grandchildren, and that's a good way of doing that. And then maybe learning to use the internet. I think a lot of people have been doing that. I mean, they've certainly been learning how to do things like WhatsApp and FaceTimes and Zooms and that, but maybe using it to do shopping, banking, that sort of thing. So all things that have to make your brain work. Crossword puzzles, or maybe word searches, and then keep working for as long as you can possibly do that. So keeping yourself active. And then the third thing about thinking brain health is to keep connected. So this could be about the old-fashioned way of being on the telephone, or using Zoom, Facebook. WhatsApp seems to be very popular. Then making a date with a friend to go and do something. It could just be for a walk around a park, or it might be to meet up for lunch, but it's all this important bit about keeping connected with people. Maybe just all meeting together now that Boris Johnson has allowed us to be a bit more free, is to meet up for a coffee morning. And this is one that I like because it's so easy to say hi or to say hello and smile at somebody, because that can make you feel really good about yourself. It probably makes them feel good about themselves as well. But it also releases some of the hormones, the happy hormones in your brain as well. Something that people don't often think about is to have a hearing assessment, because if you're not hearing very well in an environment where there are other people, then you could find that difficult and find yourself isolated because of that. And there has been quite a strong link found between hearing loss and people developing dementia. Then joining groups. These were my ladies who I really miss over at the Satcar Day Centre over in Leamington Spa. And we used to do therapeutic exercises, and then we'd have a session for doing games. And this was where we were trying to do like hoopla. And they loved it, and it made such a difference, and you could see the difference. There was a couple of ladies, they're actually in the picture there, who were really, really depressed. They were, when I started going, they would sit in the chairs, wouldn't speak to anybody. And then after a few sort of weeks, they were up and they were willing to take part in what was going on. Joining a club, doesn't matter what it is. This is chess, it could be anything. It could be a book reading club. And then the other thing that's really good for your for keeping your mind active is to volunteer, because you can get so much for yourself from volunteering, and you can offer so much to other people. And those 3 slides about thinking about your brain, these are not just for people who already have dementia. These are for people who are young, you start at your 30s, your 40s, to start to do these things and to build them into your life so that you can hopefully stop the progression of dementia. And then finally, this what we can actually offer at Ambicare with our dementia diversity. We have things called dementia buddies. So you might have a relative, somebody that you care about, who's quite lonely, and you're trying to work a day. You might still be able to work at home, which is good, but they could be calling on you quite often. But they might be lonely and isolated, and our dementia buddies are volunteers who are DBS screened to make sure they're safe to work with older people. And they can do lots of things. They can just go along for a chit chat with the person. They can find out what their interests are, take them for a walk. They can let the carer go to an appointment, and they will sit with the person. We also have well-being buddies, and these are more for the care partner of the person who's living with dementia, because it can be really stressful. You listen to all the bits of what can go wrong and how life can be difficult, but a well-being buddy can listen to that carer and perhaps be able to give them some hints about how they might be able to cope with what is going on. There can be support groups, so those can be formal groups where people want to meet together that are like-minded. We run, and we're trying to set some more up at the moment around going to call them chai and chat. So they're like mindful memories where people can go along and can talk about what happened in the old days, what happened when you lived in Kenya, and who knew who then, and what happened when you migrated here in the 60s and the 70s. So those are support groups. And then we have a telephone advice line that has the number there, where people can ring up. They can ring up and ask if we've got a dementia buddy. They can ring if they need a wellbeing buddy, if they want to know about where support groups are, or if they've got a question. Perhaps they've got a loved one who they think is possibly ready to go into a care home, but they want to know a bit more about what that might entail and how they can improve that experience for them, and we can help with that on the telephone line. And then we have a website. It's called www.dementiadiversity.org.uk. It's got much more detail about dementia, because this obviously had to just be a quick fly through about it, but you can find out more. And then we're always looking for volunteers. So no matter where you are, Zoom's a wonderful thing. We can do great things right across the country. We could probably do things across the world. But we need volunteers. We need volunteers from communities who know the communities, but one word of it's not advice, but it's one thing that's really important to us, and I do quite a lot of teaching around it, about confidentiality, because I know a lot of people don't want to come forward and say that they think that somebody might have dementia, because they don't want the rest of the community to know about it. They don't want the rest of the people to talk about it. We can find buddies who speak the language, who maybe come from a neighbouring borough or a neighbouring city, to work with that person, but they're always taught the elements of confidentiality, and that you never ever speak to anybody outside of they can tell me, because I provide supervision for them as well every 6 weeks, because it can be quite a demanding role as a volunteer, and sometimes they have things that worry them and they want to get off their chest, and then I meet up with them and then we talk those through. But even then, they don't tell me the name of the person that they are talking about. So I think if you've heard all of this and you think, that might be something that might be able to help, but you've still got that niggling worry that, well, you don't really want anybody to know, then please be assured that that's not how it works. We don't agree with the chit chat and talking about other people. So it's over to you now, really, for any questions that you would like to ask me.
Thank you, Ruth.
I'll stop.
Sorry, Ruth, carry on.
No, I was just going to say I'll stop sharing my screen, and then I'm not, unless people want those numbers left up.
Yeah, if you can just leave it for a few more minutes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, the floor is open now to anybody wanting to ask any questions to Ruth, and for Ruth to then provide a response. If you've got any questions, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Yeah, so I'll ask one to get the ball moving. You've got like yoga and everything else in there, and then the current medicines. Have you guys looked into anything in, like I say, like Ayurvedic or naturopathy that helps dementia or prevents dementia? Or are there any studies going on in that field?
There are studies going on in the field, and I'm very aware of, particularly working with older people, that their beliefs are that Ayurvedic medicine is going to help them. I suppose the place I come from is that everything that we do is evidence-based, so it's based around NHS and whatever. But if somebody's beliefs are that this is going to help them, then I'm not going to say no. That again is about knowing and understanding the person.
Yeah, don't worry, 2 minutes.
No, I think what you're on about is like a placebo effect. Is that what you're on about, or I'm on about like actual fact-based? Because what we're finding is, or even people that we know with dementia, is the pharmaceutical companies will only invest into research into pharmaceutical medicines, not naturopathy, because obviously they're not going to make money. And I think that's not something that it's not your field, but this is what's come out. but certain sciences and certain tests are showing like turmeric is meant to prevent dementia. Is that something that's been kind of endorsed within the NHS or any other fields, or is that just a preventative measure?
Yeah, it's not endorsed within the NHS, but I mean, I've heard of that just sort of in general, living in the community for so long. You hear that all the time, don't you? And then people would take it for colds and whatever. But I think you've hit upon a really important point, that it's no good just saying, oh, you can't use those, you need to use what the NHS is using or whatever, that some research needs to be done. Somebody needs to find some funding to do that that research. I don't think I'm saying that it's a placebo. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that there hasn't been, as far as I know, any evidence produced to say that yes, that would work. But I think that because everything is so interlinked with your for your well-being, you know, around your social connections, around your finances, around your education, around everything, that it's again about getting to know that person, and I think that it's all right to say to them, we'll try it, because the other thing that hasn't been proved is that it does any harm.
Yeah, we know there's lots more benefits on it, but it was more in line with dementia. That there's several, probably hundreds of benefits of it, but it was more in the dementia field to see. But obviously, we know like yoga and keeping your mind active and your brain active is definitely it's just recharging and keep the circuits flowing. If it goes dormant, you know that part of the body is kind of ceases to be. No, it's not wanted anymore, so it just goes dormant.
Right, yeah, it's not just that it's dormant. I mean, you are exactly right that if you don't use it, then you lose it, and then that's adding on top of the that they're being damaged because of if somebody's had a stroke, or you can get plaques and tangles with Alzheimer's disease, and the brain cells die, and then you can't replace them again. But somebody probably does need to do some research around.
I think there is this year. I think the government said they are going to invest into Alzheimer's and dementia because it is a growing issue, and it has been pushed aside for a long time. But so
Alzheimer's, they've been doing research for a long time, and at the moment I'm trying to do a PhD on dementia and minority ethnic groups, and I get so frustrated because everything I look at dates way back to 2009. The world hasn't changed. Nothing has changed in the world of dementia. We've wasted all those years of, you know, that we could have been doing something. And you're absolutely right. The main thing that the research people are doing is around drugs to try and prevent it or cure it. They're just not getting anywhere with that at the moment. I think there has to be a concentration on those three things that I was talking about looking after your heart, because the interesting thing is that people from the Asian community are at great risk of diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, exactly the same things as dementia. So, you know, that's why they're connecting the two.
Oh yeah, I think that's what it is. It needs to be done. Any other questions on there as well?
Hi, sorry, my name's Nikki. Firstly, Ruth, I just wanted to say that's a wonderful presentation and lots of information there. So thank you. I just wanted to share something. My mum's actually got dementia, and Ruth, any advice on somebody that goes virtually silent? Anything for something like that?
She stopped speaking. Yeah, Is that what you're saying? Or does she speak sometimes, or does she just remain silent all the time?
No, so it did start with kind of words and names of her children, and we used to do flashcards of things around the house, or but now I would say it is silence. It looks like she's lost her voice altogether, but is there anything we could do for that?
I think the sad thing with dementia is it doesn't matter how much you try to train somebody to relearn the things that they've lost.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do it, because the reason they've lost them is because those brain cells have died and you can't make them grow again. So then you need to look at what does it's your mum, isn't it, Nikki?
Mum, yeah.
Yeah. What does your mum do? How does she communicate with you? Does she at all, or does she just sit quietly?
I think there's a lot of smiles and gestures like that, with hands and things, and there's a lot of like no words, but just like that.
Okay.
Sounds more than anything.
Yeah.
I mean, this lady, she was a hardworking lady, and she retired at 65. And soon as she retired, she went quiet. At that point, I took her to the GPs and then doctors and hospitals, had MRI scans up, and it came up in the scan that the part of her brain was damaged. So it was just all so quick, and she's only 65. Bless her, she's 68 now, but that is still very, very early for dementia, isn't it?
No, it is. I mean, I think that you've just got to make her feel as safe as she possibly can. I mean, you're saying that she seems to like touch, and that's another thing that I didn't sort of mention, but that is appreciating people's private space. So asking people, just sitting down beside her on the settee or wherever she is, and just saying, can I sit down here beside you? And I'm sure she'll nod or something to say that yes, you can. And then maybe if you've got some old pictures, I don't know, did she come over from Kenya, or was she born in England?
No, she's she was born in India, but came over when she was about 14, 15, I think. But yeah, we do the picture one. We'll do old pictures of when she was young, going right up to weddings she's done recently. And
no, that's good to do. I tell you another thing that you can do is to use Google Earth. You can actually Google where your mum came from in India, and it'll show you a view of what's going on there. Just
try that one.
Yeah, just something to sort of interest her. Does she like music? Does she like any of the old Bollywood songs?
Nikki, you there?
Yeah, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you had just gone off for a while, sorry.
Yeah. Does she like any of the old Bollywood songs?
Yeah, she'll do songs and things. We'll put like old wedding videos on. She likes colouring and painting.
I mean,
I think we just keep her busy, but there's no magic medicine or anything, is there? There's nothing.
No, there isn't magic medicine, and I think that's the sad thing, that once the brain cells have gone, then they've gone, and that's why it's such a cruel disease, really. It's
horrible.
Bit by bit, it takes a different bit away from someone. But I mean, it's if she's quite content, she's smiling. I mean, as I said before, there's plenty of sort of smiling every time that you sort of see her.
Always smiling. There's nothing aggressive about my mum at all.
No.
Very, very calm, placid, smiling all the time. So that's a positive then, isn't it?
No, it absolutely, it is a positive, and she's obviously still enjoying some. It's finding the things that she enjoys.
Thank you, Ruth. Thank you.
Nikki, is she mobile at all? No.
Yes, she is. For now, touch wood. Yes, she is. So she's got her own house, and my little brother lives there. But my sister and me collect her, and she comes and stays at mine and my other sisters as well. So she is traveling around at the minute. I don't know how long for, but she is mobile at the moment. Yeah.
I just wondered if she enjoyed cooking, if she might want to help.
No, she can't cook because she'll leave gas on, and she's just. But she can prep, like peel things and.
I was going to say helping somebody to do it though, so she would be doing the prepping and maybe giving.
Yeah, she loves prepping. Yeah,
but somebody there all the time with her, so that she is safe doing that. Because if she enjoyed cooking, it's a big loss to be able to do it anymore.
It is difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, but you can sometimes help people to do just the simple things. Yeah,
we do. We try and keep her busy, but it's just hard, isn't it? I think, Ruth.
It is, and sometimes that's where a buddy comes in handy. They because they can take over some of that chatting and talking and whatever, and give you a break for a couple of hours or whatever to be able to do something else. So that's why we started the buddies.
Any further questions?
Yes, my name is Pushpa Madhani. I thank you, Ruth. One of the best presentations so far I have heard. You've explained it so very well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dementia, can that be hereditary?
They're not too sure on that. They think that possibly there's some types that are hereditary. What they do think is that if you've got a mother or a father or a brother or a sister who has dementia, you're more likely that you would get it. So I think a lot of it is to do with lifestyle, the way, whether you keep yourself healthy and active or not. I think that's got a lot to do with not developing it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. It's Numa from London.
Hi, Numa.
I want to thank you very much for this. Actually, one amazing thing that I noticed that I should have known better about the medical and social model. I know about that, especially in relation of physical disability and sensory impairment in that. But, I had never, ever thought of it in relation to Alzheimer's, and I think it's so important. So that is a very important thing for me to have learned from your presentation. So thanks very much for that, Ruth.
Thank you, Numa.
Any other questions from anybody? No? Okay, well, in that case, we'll bring a session to a closer. I'll hand it over to Jazz. Jazz, do you want to put your camera on?
Oh, sorry. I thought I did. Hey.
Yeah.
So Ruth, again, thank you very much for your time today and giving us all the information on dementia. It has definitely been an eye-opener. Even myself, knowing a bit about dementia, didn't know there were certain factors that bring dementia in, and there's certain types of dementias out there. You always just think you're just losing your memory and that's it, but all things to do with social aspects and all that, it's definitely been an insight. I also want to thank everybody who joined today. Hopefully they've taken something back that they can take back into the community and feed it to their friends and family. And hopefully we'll do another session at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock this time. It's on time. But again, Ruth, thank you again, and we'll be in touch, and definitely we'll do another session and a bit more insight on it as well, with hopefully more questions as well, as we've learned a bit more today.
It's such a huge topic to try, and it almost needs a course to go through.
Yeah, no. I think the information you gave is definitely important, but I think we need a bit more questions out there, but more of a Q&A answer where we can dig in, and hopefully we can get some more information on some natural things that people can do instead of just pumping their bodies with chemicals these days, which you're probably curing one thing or suppressing one thing. I wouldn't say curing, but it's adding on more other things to the body which they can't tolerate. Like you said, mixing the medicines. So maybe if you're taking one, we need to get more information. Is it compatible with the other one? So some sort of information back on that will be good.
Yeah.
So like Hate said, so we bring the session to a close. So till next time, everybody, take care of yourself and each other.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
that's
you.
great.
Thank you.
And if,
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. See ya.
This
Bye.
session is recorded, so if you'd like to re-watch it again, then you can look at it on our YouTube channel. Just search for Hindu Council Birmingham, subscribe to the channel, and you'll be able to then pick up the sessions.
Cheers.
Thanks, everybody. Good
Yeah.
night.
Bye.